Hello, I'm Late to the Gamer. This is Console and Control, and welcome to Final Fantasy XIV Dawntrail Story Explained Completely. Chapter timestamps are in the description and the pinned comment. We're taking my character, Vehement Morningwood, into Tural, so without further ado. So we continue our story in Old Sharlayan, where we met the energetic Wuk Lamat, who retained Alphino, Alizé, Crescendo, and myself to assist her attempt to become the new leader of her land of Tural. Crescendo has opted to join us because she realized her missing grandfather has a connection to Wuk's father, the current leader of the continent. So we embark, and naturally, in a world with pearl-sized cell phones, spaceships, and a breathable environment on the moon, we'll travel by boat. Now, Tural is very different from Eorzea. Decades ago, the Dawnservant traveled the entire continent and united all the different races under one flag. Honestly, I wonder how much time I could have saved if I didn't have to manually recruit and unite all the countries in Eorzea to fight the Ascians, but I digress. Anyway, we head over to the throne room to finally meet the Dawnservant, only to catch him sparring with Justinian. After the fight, the Dawnservant's head of resolve explains that he's getting too old for this and he's only a couple of weeks away from retirement. The head of reason sleeps most of the day, trying to maintain its strength, so he wants his children to compete in a trial to determine the next ruler. The competing parties, his children, are Zarul Ja, Kona, accompanied by fan creator Nurianje, Wuk Lamat, and the chosen of the Mamuk race, Bakul Jaja. Wuk warned that Bakul Jaja and Zarul Ja are the greatest threats. Bakul because he's a Weasley idiot, and Zarul Ja because he's a warmonger. Their right of succession will be completing the 7 labors their father undertook to unite Tural and locating the lost city of gold. Each participant will carry 7 tablets recounting the Dawnservant's trials and use them as clues. They will have to track down each area's elector and complete the requested labor. If the labor is completed, they will get one of the keystones needed to open the City of Gold. So the party heads out to the village of the Pelu Pelu, a tribe that specializes in trade. After some asking around, they locate the elector and are tasked with retrieving an alpaca. On the flip side, Zarul Ja walks into the territory and stares at someone so intensely they immediately point him to the elector. Lamat's attempt to tame a wild alpaca doesn't go well at all, and a girl named Mambu suggests that she gets a taming saddle from a peddler. Upon finding out who Lamat is, the peddler asks for a steep price for the mount, as he would prefer Zarul Ja to be the next Dawnservant. Without money, the party begins to intimately learn about the Pelu Pelu as they begin a chain of bartering to acquire the money they need. With the mount in hand, Lamat tames the wild alpaca and retrieves her first keystone. And never one to be outdone, Zarul Ja reveals that he's tamed the elusive golden wild alpaca. Wuk Lamat's first-hand experience increased her respect for the art of the deal and taught her to think critically. The elector recounts for her how the Dawnservant helped liberate them from the mountain giants and proposed that the Pelu Pelu travel and sell their merchandise. The next stop on our road trip is the beautiful forest paradise that I'm literally not even going to try to pronounce. We're off to the village of Okanu to find the next elector. Upon arriving, we find that Kona and his party are ahead of us, and the elector freely reveals himself. Before they can explain the labor, Bakul Jaja suggests that instead of completing the trial, he would take the keystone by force, but he's rudely warned that attacking an elector will cause for an immediate disqualification. With that out the way, the elector explains that this labor is called the Feat of Reeds, as the reeds are of high importance to the local culture. After investigating the outskirts of town, the party learns that the reeds that have been planted don't appear healthy. While the conditions for growth appear to be ideal, something is affecting the crop. Lamat remembers that when she came to this village in the past, there was the Lifting of Wings festival that isn't happening now. Knowing that it's a harvest festival, Lamat believes that its absence is causing the crops to fail and commits to helping the Hanu put on their festival. Initially skeptical, the Scions agree to help. The party makes their way back to town to check out the festival float. It's in bad shape, and after a thorough investigation, we suggest that the float may actually be an arcane focus for the harvest prayers. While the party looks for parts to fix the float, Bakul Jaja spies on them for answers. Once all the pieces have been brought together, the festival leader begins repairing the float. Lamat and the party depart to learn more about the local culture, realizing that the ritual totems look familiar to totems found in Eorzea, and they learn that the Hanu are in fact related to a similar tribe back home. In the meantime, Bakul Jaja threatens to steal the festival float, but fortunately, the party arrives just in time to change his mind. With all the preparations complete, the lifting of wings can begin. Lamat rides the float as it's carried from the village over to the ritual totem, where the power of the focus is put on display. It takes the life force of the believers, channels it into the totem, and the totem expels a burst of ether that showers over the crops. Kona, on the other hand, as a gifted scientist, simply walks over to another patch of poorly growing reeds and pours a liquid into the water, making that patch grow instantly as well. Having learned about ether in Old Charlian, and with advice from Thancred and Urianger, Kona concluded that stagnant ether prevented the crops from growing. He says that Lamat's solution is medieval, and his way is the better way. While Lamat is actively participating in each culture with empathy and understanding, Kona's analytical approach displeases the elector. Nonetheless, they both earn a keystone. As we head back to Toliolal to make preparations for the next labor, it's revealed that Bakul Jaja got his hands on a test vial of Kona's Miracle Grow in hopes of completing the feat of the reeds without expending any real effort. Wuk Lamat decides that the next feat she wants to tackle is with the Yakoi, the mountain giants that once subjugated the Pelu Pelu. But since no one is an expert climber, the party needs to take a different route. We decide to depart by boat, go around the mountain, cut through the Moblin territory. As we prepare to launch, Bakul Jaja spies on us with the intention to stop our progress. We take to the river, and of course, Bakul is there with his minions and ready to attack. Failing to take us out though, he disables our boat, sending us into the bank of the river. Alizé and Erenvel attempt to fix the boat, while the rest of the party makes their way through the jungle. We're relentlessly pursued by the apex predator, and after a lengthy battle, we defeat it, but we find no other path to our destination. Disappointed, we resign to heading back to the boat to help with the repairs, knowing that this is going to slow us down. Fortunately though, Erenvel and Alizé arrive with the boat back in working order, and we're able to continue. Stopping for the night to conserve our strength, we get some insight on Wuk Lamat's and Kryle's early years. Lamat was born in Ikrash, but has no memories of the place and has never returned, while Kryle never knew her parents. Still, both of them love and revere their adopted parents. Lamat reflects on everything the Dawnservant taught her, realizing he was preparing her, but she feels that she's too ignorant to follow in his footsteps. She's not as smart as Kona, nor as strong as Tural, but we tell her to stop measuring herself by their standards. Lamat says her motivations were never about competing with her brothers. It's what she can do for her people as Dawnservant. Kryle points out that Wuk Lamat's strength is and has always been her empathy. With newfound focus, Lamat commits to staying true to herself, locating the City of Gold, and helping Kryle locate her grandfather. Not far from our party, Kona, Thancred, and Urianger discuss their motivations for working together. Kona's intentions are as noble as Lamat's, while Thancred and Urianger can't help but be excited just to compete against the Hero of Light and the other Scions. Understanding that the person destined to become the next Dawnservant only needs to gather the keystones, not necessarily complete the 7 feats, they prepare for more face-to-face conflicts. Elsewhere, Tural Ja is ahead of the other competitors. His retainer, Surreal Ja, assures him that he is destined to become the next Dawnservant. Surreal confides that he spoke to the Dawnservant's inner circle and was told that inside the City of Gold there is an unimaginable power. As his loyal servant, he appeals to Surreal Ja to share some of that power with him as well. Without receiving an answer, he changes the subject to confirm that he can proceed with the plan he has in store for the heroes, no matter who suffers. Tural eagerly agrees. Back in the jungle, Bakul Jaja boasts to his retainer after easily taking down one of the apex predators. When questioned on what he would do as Dawnservant, he simply replies that he has no plans. He's in it for the contest and to prove that all two-headed Mamul are the superior race. He'll drive out the other races and invite his kin to live in the city and away from their rotting jungle. But for now, he's on the hunt for Surreal Ja. Upon entering the town of Earthenshire, the party is approached by the appointed elector. They regretfully inform Lamat that they can't proceed with the feat of pots because the recent storm that destroyed their path up the mountain also injured many of their help hands. Their help hands assist the potsworn, and the potsworn are artisans hired by the moblins. They are given tools, materials, and a place to live to allow them to focus on their craft. This is why the finest metalwork in all of Tural is created in Earthenshire. But with the potsworn leaving due to the lack of assistance, Earthenshire is in danger of grinding to a halt. Without a second thought, Lamat and the party volunteer to replace the help hands and keep the village thriving. The team splits off to improve the working conditions. We suggest changes to the food, the temperature of the workshops, and some more tools. On our way to pick up what we need, we run into Kona and Thancred. Kona remarks that the Elector also asked for his help, but he just suggested that they get artisans from Old Charlian instead of helping. Instead, Kona, Thancred, and Uriandre are trying to heal the injured help hands. Kona obsesses over his experience in Old Charlian. Instead of trying to help the people of Tural by acknowledging their differences, beliefs, and customs, he wants to modernize and change the status quo to more emulate Old Charlian. Thancred finds the notion condescending, but he doesn't voice his opinion. With some effort, the conditions in Earthenshire are a vast improvement. Their star Potsworn is delighted with the changes and eagerly begins working again. Now that the emergency has been taken care of, they're ready to begin the feat of pots. While Lamat helped the Potsworn and Kuona healed the help hands, Doral Ja cleared the fallen rocks from the mountain path and restored it. Bakul Jaja also shows up, having done nothing. The Elector tasks each of the claimants to recruit one artisan and bring them back. So the party returns to Tuliolau and convinced an artisan that they met earlier named Fanjon Tain to move to Earthenshire. Before we can return and complete the feat, Alul Jaja, the Dawnservant, requests to see us alone. They heard from Estinian that we were a renowned warrior and he wants to face us in battle. The Dawnservant is the epitome of old man strength. Even with one head asleep, he's one hell of an opponent, able to wield powerful magic and bone-breaking physical attacks. The battle of strength ends in a draw, and the Dawnservant admits that he really asked us for the duel to assess our ability to guide and watch over Lamat. He's concerned about his daughter's well-being and asks if she is growing. We admit that we see potential in her, but she's still not ready for the throne just yet. His hope is that she and all his children rise to the occasion. The trials aren't to choose a candidate, but to cultivate one. If he feels that none of them are ready, he will remain the Dawnservant instead. He wishes for us to inspire Lamat as her mentor. The party prepares to return to Earthenshire, but are stopped by Wuk Ivu, person we met in Okanu. He warns that everyone, except the Dawnservant, that searched for the City of Gold never returned and begs us to stop the trials. Trial concludes that the legend of the city may have originated with the Yakoi, as they are the oldest tribe in Tural. The party intends to escort Fanjon Tain to Earthenshire and then go to the mountain giants. Meanwhile, as Aral Ja escorts his artisan to the Moblin village, Bakul Jaja ambushes him and attempts to abduct the goldsmith. In an extremely one-sided performance, Bakul is defeated with one blow. Tural allows him to live, but Bakul is mentally devastated. Lamat is the first to arrive in Earthenshire and is awarded with her keystone. Soon follows Aral and Kona. It is revealed that not only is Aral a warmonger, but upon becoming Dawnservant, he intends to begin a global assault to expand his territory. His plan is to go into every territory and begin a war of attrition by endlessly attacking until his opponents grow tired of loss and submit. By subjugating the world, everyone will know and truly understand the value of peace. The Moblin Elector reflects on the Dawnservant's first visit to Earthenshire and their old ways. The Moblin did not interact with the other people of Tural, and the Dawnservant is the one who suggested their pot packs to interact with the outside world. By bringing in artisans and bringing them joy, they were able to focus on their work, and the Moblins were able to trade the crafts and maintain the village. Their once separatist society became a mecca for artistry and trade. As we arrive at the base of the mountain, a pink-haired man stops us. He brings a message from Earthenshire requesting Lamat to return. The Elector had one more thing to give her. Seeing as there's no danger, Wuk Lamat heads back. When she doesn't return after a few hours, Alphino tries contacting her via Link Pearl, but he doesn't get an answer. Concerned, we return to Earthenshire. The Elector confirms our fears when they say they did not send for Lamat. At the time, Kona approaches us, wondering where his sister is. He snaps at us for losing our charge. The competition has reached a turning point, and he knows she's in danger. Kona pairs with us, while the rest of the group split up to investigate. We backtrack up the road and question a peddler that was attacked by bandits earlier. The peddler describes the pink-haired man. Kona believes they kidnapped Lamat for ransom and decides to spring a trap to catch them. He disguises himself as a well-off merchant to draw out an ambush. In the town of Many Fires, Kona flaunts his wealth to get the bandits' attention. Realizing the pink-haired man was spying on him, Kona sets out alone on the main road. As expected, he is ambushed, but we spring out from behind the trees to confront the crew. While his underlings fight us, the pink-haired man runs off. We easily take out and tie up the bandits, but they refuse to snitch. Kona loses his patience and gives them an ultimatum: talk or die. Fearful of this vengeful side of Kona, they confess that they were hired to capture Lamat, but they don't know where she is. We track the pink-haired man and tail him back to a mine shaft where he meets with the familiar Mamu Ja. We observe the pink-haired man take his payment and leave, while the Mamu Ja unknowingly leads us to the dock. Thancred catches up to us, and together we watch the Mamu Ja break our ship, then take off in a small boat. Thancred proposes following along the riverbank, but warns that this setback could cost Kona the contest. Impassioned, Kona states that he would give up the throne to save his sister. We decide to return to the group and wait for Thancred to contact us. Kona tells us about his early life. He explains that he was abandoned by his parents, and by chance, the Dawnservant adopted him. Wuk Lamat was also abandoned and adopted by his father, and he understands the pain of being unwanted, so he swore he would always be there for his little sister. Back together, we update everyone on the current situation, and Arenvel gets our ship back in working order. Once Thancred gives us Lamat's location, we go back downriver into the jungle. We find Bakul Jaja gloating over Wuk Lamat while holding her keystones. In the middle of his evil speech, Kona just shoots him in the head. Unfortunately, the thick scales reflect the bullets. Bakul calls out for the sniper, and we reveal ourselves. He tries to continue his monologue, but every time he opens his mouth, Kona shoots him again. Gangster. Thancred leaps from behind and frees Lamat while Kona makes the catch. Instead of us fighting head-on, Bakul Jaja's left head suggests they retreat. After losing to Tural Ja, they're already injured, and if they die, they will have failed their siblings. Back in Minifires, Lamat considers quitting the contest, but we convince her to continue. Thancred recalls that Bakul Jaja referenced the Bonawa when we confronted him, leading Kona to surmise that the person referenced is Tural Ja's retainer. Kona emphatically curses Tural Ja for his part in the kidnapping, and for the first time, out in the open, in front of everyone, he drops his calm and stoic persona and reveals his emotional side. Despite everything that's happened, Lamat wonders what kind of desperation could have driven people to banditry in the first place. She wants to find a way to improve things so that the people of Tural won't feel the need to resort to a life of crime. We finally arrive at the home of the Yakoi. They stay in their homes as part of their pact with the Dawnservant. They guard Valigarmanda, the Sky Ruin. The Dawnservant trapped it inside the Yakoi temple, the feat known as the Lay of Ice, meaning that although Lamat lost one keystone, she can complete the Feat of Proof and the Feat of Ice at this location. The party sees the Sky Ruin frozen in an orb of ice inside the temple. Zermerer informs them that the Elector is not present, but we must scour the mountains and find him in order to complete the trial. Before we leave, he recounts how the Dawnservant and his party battled the Sky Ruin for 10 days straight. The powerful beast controls lightning, fire, and ice magic. So the Head of Reason tricked it into losing control of its ice magic, and it trapped itself in frozen ether, where it has remained for the last 80 years. The magic sustaining its cage is waning, and they believe that the recent storm that injured many in Earthenshire is the result of the Sky Ruin's power escaping. We search the city for clues to the Elector's location, and we learn more about the Yakoi history and customs. They do not believe in death in the conventional manner. True death is when you are forgotten. So before death, everyone has a sepulchre built with their feats recorded. The monuments keep them alive in each other's hearts. A chronicler teaches us that 1,000 years ago, the Yakoi dominated most of Tural. Over the course of a century, they even built a bridge over the sea to the northern islands because they were too large to travel by boat. That bridge is still in use to this very day. And upon reaching the north, sickness decimated their numbers. The chronicler then instructs us to climb Worker Zormer to find the Elector and face them in battle. As we arrive to the entrance of the mountain path, we are stopped by Yakoi zealots. They resent the Dawnservant's peace and want to restore the Yakoi's dominance over Tural. To do so, they will eliminate the claimants and create a power vacuum. Before they can attack though, we are all ambushed by a giant bird. It uses magic on one of the zealots, and Lamat selflessly defends them when the beast attempts a finishing blow. After the bird is scared off, Alphino heals the injured Yakoi paladin, confusing the zealots. Lamat explains that she could not let them die before she got a chance to learn about them all. She wants to know more about them, not for strategic advantage, but because since they all share Tural, it's best that they become friends. Allowed to pass, we fight our way up the mountain, encountering all manner of gigantic creatures we've never seen before. Near the peak, we face the bird that attacked us earlier. We take it out and finally reach Gerfurler. He dwarfs the other giants, standing twice as tall as the rest and capable of wielding fire, water, and wind magic. When we defeat Gerfurler, he congratulates us and allows us to ask some questions. We inquire about his size, and he tells us that all Yakoi used to be his size, but most died due to illness upon reaching the northern islands. He confirms that the legend of the Golden City originated with the Yakoi. It was the reason that they traveled to the north in the first place. Hundreds of his ancestors all had the same vision of the city, causing them to realize that it was divine revelation. And the reason why the legend is so prevalent in Tural is because all of the territories under their control assisted with the expedition. Kona and his team arrive to challenge Gerfurler, and when they defeat him as well, both parties are rewarded their keystones. Urianger informs us that Bakul Jaja attacked them as they began their ascent up the mountain, but quickly backed off. Kona inquires about the significance of the site of the trial, and Gerfurler reveals that it's a burial ground for the Yakoi High Luminaries. Zoral Ja and his retainer Cyril Ja then reveal themselves, having already completed the feat, and Lamat nearly attacks Cyril for setting up her kidnapping, but Gerfurler scalds them. Because the Dawnservant defeated the Sky Ruin, he has a sepulture at the peak. We learned that Ketenram, a pirate explorer from Eorzea, and Kefkiwa, the Seeker of the Unknown, were in the party. The three siblings reflect on their father's accomplishments and think about what traits they've acquired from him. Zoral Ja inherited the Head of Resolve's martial prowess, Kona inherited the Head of Reason's cleverness, and Lamat inherited their combined love of peace. Suddenly, a monstrous roar interrupts the peaceful moment. Alphino calls us back to the Yakoi temple. Valigarmonda broke free. We rush back down the mountain and help the injured villagers before entering the temple. We receive a vision that Bakul Jaja entered the temple and freed the Sky Ruin by simultaneously casting a fire and revive spell on the frozen beast. Zermerer sent word to Toliolau requesting that the Landsguard help them, but it will take time for them to arrive. Wuk Lamat knows that Valigarmonda will massacre the entire region, so she volunteers to stay and fight it. But we, having experienced slaying gods, join her. Gerfurler sends word of the danger to the Pelu Pelu, warning that they may need to flee to lower ground. We follow the Sky Ruin's path of carnage. Its strong magical power creates fire that burns forever, ice that does not thaw, and lightning that never ceases. We track it to the mountain Wakor Lador, where the beast is attempting to replenish his ether after being frozen for so long. The Yakoi zealots forbid us from entering the sacred ground, but Lamat explains that our intention is not to trespass, but to slay the Sky Ruin. The zealot believes that we don't stand a chance, but when Kona, Urianger, and Thancred arrive, Kona points out that the monuments of Valigarmonda's defeat bears the name of 7 heroes, and right now there are 7 warriors willing to stand up against the beast. Still unconvinced, the zealot denies us. Finally, Zoral Ja joins us, bringing the number to 8. Yet again, the zealot denies our passage, causing Zoral to prepare to kill him. Lamat scolds her brother and warns that if Zoral attacks, he'll have to go through her. The tense standoff ends when the zealot she saved earlier vouches for her and appeals to his kin to allow us to pass. Lamat calls for the contest to be paused for the greater good of Tural. By this point, the Sky Ruin has absorbed so much ether, it has multiplies in size and strength. It uses every trick it has to take us down. It combines and stacks magics on top of each other in its effort to kill us. But with our combined forces, we're able to finally kill the beast. We return to Gerfurler with news of our victory, but he is already aware of our feat. Zermerer tells us that he had plans for a second feat in town, but Bakul Jaja's reckless behavior made that feat pointless. The original feat of ice would have been to fortify the Sky Ruin's prison. Since the Sky Ruin is no more, Zoral Ja, Kona, and Wuk Lamat are all awarded a keystone for completing the feat of ice. With the Yakoi's charged dispatch, Lamat invites Gerfurler to finally visit the capital. Before we can leave for the next feat, the zealots approach us. They feel indebted to Lamat and wish to clear their ledger. Crile suggests they tell us about the dreams of the Golden City. The lead zealot, Vorpolor, recounts the visions of his forebears. They saw a heavenly land suffused with a golden glow where people lived as gods, never aging, never dying, and free from strife. Everyone lived in a palace, and a silent goddess reigned. There was also a statue so tall, even his ancestors would need to look up to view it. Vorpolor reveals that all the Yakoi that dreamt of the city of gold hailed from the forests and quarries of Yaktael, which happens to be the location of another of the Dawnservant's feats. When the Yakoi that ventured north died, the few that remained in Yaktael were forced to abandon their territory and withdrew to where they are now. After that, the Yakoi never dreamed of the Golden City again. Back in Tural, we discuss Lamat's position in the competition. She has one keystone less than Tural Jah and Kona. Bakul Jah has her stolen keystone, but he didn't complete the feat of proof or ice, so he couldn't have more than 3. He must be planning on stealing the rest. The feat of Repast and the feat of Brotherhood are left. Repast involves the conflict between the Mamul Jah and the Jabral in the village of Ikrash, where Lamat was born. But the feat of Brotherhood remains a mystery. All we know about the legend is that the Eorzean pirate Ketenram asked for an audience with the Dawnservant, but nothing else. Alphino notes that in Eorzea, the tale of Ketenram has been passed down. He crossed the ocean and befriended a 2-headed king called the Artok while traveling across Tural. He made several trips back and forth, but was last lost at sea. Erenvel recognizes the title of Artok and that 80 years ago, the capital city did not likely exist. So Ketenram must have met the future Dawnservant in Mamuk, the Mamul Jah homeland. Since both locations are in Yaktael, we travel by balloon. In Ikrash, we are welcomed by a villager who takes us to where the feat of Repast will take place. The other claimants are already there, and the villager reveals himself to be Hunmu-Ruk, the leader of the village, and the anointed elector. He explains that they could not begin the competition until all the claimants arrived because this one will require cooperation to complete the challenge. Lamat and Kona are paired together, and the challenge is explained. Each team will prepare the traditional Zabral meal, Zibruk Pibil. While Lamat understands that every challenge is a lesson on the customs and history of the people of Tural, Kona acknowledges that yes, he has learned a lot, but he still maintains his futurist beliefs. The claimants will not be given the official recipe for the dish. They must instead figure it out on their own through investigation. The first team to prepare a satisfactory Zibruk Pibil will win. Our combined team splits up to see what we can find out. The villagers are unable to help, but they will give us subtle clues to tell us what's needed to make the dish. We figure out what meat is needed and that the dish is cooked in an underground oven. We also discover what seasonings to use, but not the amounts. And we also figure out that a banana leaf is involved somehow. We ask a cook where we can find the banana, but he informs us that that area is blocked off. They are nice enough to give us a hint and encourage us to visit a settlement that was ruined by the war between the Mamul Jah and the Zabral. In the village, we run into Wuk Lamat again. He gives us an in-depth history lesson. Mamuk is in the lower forest where the canopy blocks out the sun and the soil ruins the crops. Envious of the Jabral, the Mamul Jah launched a campaign to take the upper forest, but like Obi-Wan pointed out, the high ground has the advantage and they were held back. Their conflict lasted for over 400 years, but one day, the Mamul Jah made it to this very village and destroyed it. But there was infighting amongst the Mamul Jah. 3 factions vied for dominance. To quell the infighting, the leaders of the factions suggested crossbreeding between them. Nearly none of the children survived till birth, and if they did, they soon died of complications. That is, until one day a 2-headed Mamul Jah was born. Gifted physically and magically, the child eventually grew into a mighty warrior and became the first Artok. Under their leadership, the Mamul Jah grew powerful. Wuk Lamat then takes us to Cinderfield, where the Jabral and Mamul Jah left a permanent scar on the land with their war. It ended 80 years ago when the Dawnservant and his allies defeated both armies and started negotiations. He called for a parley and initiated the peace talks. He introduced Ketenram to both groups and explained that the pirate traveled across the ocean from the continent to the east, a distance thought to be impossible. The Dawnservant proposed the question: if Ketenram were instead a warlord, how would they defend themselves against a foreign power with technology capable of doing something they couldn't even imagine? Together, they can all protect Tural. Their cooperation and trust in each other will protect one group's perceived weakness with an ally's greatest strength. The Dawnservant requested that for just one evening, they all stop fighting and exchange traditional cuisine. Each side was impressed by the other side's dish, and the Dawnservant challenged them to work together to create something new. Zebruk Pibil is proof of their newfound cooperation, and instead of just one evening, the warriors broke bread with each other over the next 3 days. The Dawnservant left them with the wise words: ignorance begets strife, understanding begets fellowship. Wuk leads us to the center of Cinderfield where a monument lies, symbolizing the promise of peace. Below it, Lamat and Kona find a box buried containing the very banana leaves we need to complete the dish. Wuk thanks everyone for listening to him and tells Lamat that he thinks that she is the most fitting to become the next ruler. After witnessing her selfless approach to the feat of reeds, he realized that she is the only candidate that truly embodies the Dawnservant's essence. No one else cares more for their people and what they hold dear. Back in Igrash, we rejoin the group who has figured out the rest of the recipe, and we prepare Zebruk Pibil. We get the approval from the Elector, while the team of Zaralja and Bakul Jaja failed because they did not show interest in the local culture and thus did not find the banana leaves in Cinderfield. Lamat and Kona receive keystones, absolutely pissing off Zaralja. Later that evening, Kona, Urianje, and Thancred sit by a fire. Kona finally acknowledges how ignorant he's been throughout the competition. He regrets that he's failed to even try to understand his own people. Realizing that he can't connect with the people, he decides that he shouldn't be the next Dawnservant. The next day, the path to Mamuk has been cleared. Rook informs us that most of the Mamalja that support the Dawnservant moved to the capital city, so we could receive a rather cold reception. These Mamulja are traditionalists, and while they won't restart the war, they do not take to outsiders. The first things we notice about the lower forest are the meteorite fragments scattered throughout the area and the cool blue glow the flora emit. Upon entering Mamuk, we split up and try to find the Elector, but literally no one will speak to us. No matter who we go to, they turn their back. Alphino calls us via Link Pearl when he finds the Elector, and we arrive just in time to see the Dawnservant standing over a beaten Zaralja. Alphino explains that the Artok summoned the shade of the Dawnservant in his prime for the feat of brotherhood. The Artok has rigged the contest. He believes that only another blessed sibling could defeat the Dawnservant. Zaralja foolishly chose to fight the Shade alone, and after realizing he was losing, attempted to take the Keystones by force, so now he's been disqualified from the right of succession. Bakul Jaja then arrives and reveals that he only completed 2 feats, infuriating the Artok. He commands Bakul take the rest of the Keystones from Lamat right now, but he declines because he's already tried and failed. Disappointed, the Artok banishes Bakul Jaja from Mamuk. The Elector then demands the final 2 claimants challenge the Shade immediately, but Lamat and Kona decide not to proceed until they actually learn about the people of Mamuk and the ways of the Mamalja. The Artok leaves and his wife follows, but she's touched by the sentiment and quietly instructs Lamat to meet her on the outskirts of town. Milao Ja explains why the people of Mamuk have been so cold to us. They believe that blessed siblings are superior and are the only people fit to lead the continent. They don't address outsiders because they deem them inferior and beneath notice. Milao believes that the culture is backwards and senseless. There are more who agree with her, but they're vastly outnumbered and can't speak freely. But she feels that with Lamat, those people can reclaim their agency. Because Lamat, a Jabrali, presumed to be inferior by all accounts, has defeated Bakul Jaja, their logic fails. Lamat admits that Bakul is a force to be reckoned with, and if he just trusted in his abilities and didn't look for shortcuts, he could beat her. Milal explains that he behaves the way he does because he's desperate. The Mamulja have always looked to blessed siblings as the answer to all their problems, and the Dawnservant's numerous triumphs have only confirmed their obsessive belief that their 2-headed counterparts are superior. But Lamat, as the Dawnservant's daughter and Jabrali, proves that strength lies in character, not genetics. We're taken to an underground pier built by the Yokoi centuries ago where a broken Bakul Jaja awaits. Milao consoles her son and reveals that Bakul actually agrees with his mother. Their goal has always been to stop the practice of creating blessed siblings. We are actually standing in a burial site where all the 2-headed Mamulja infants that died are laid to rest. Milal explains that after the first blessed sibling was born and they grew strong enough to push the Jibral back, victory became obsession. Mamul-Jah tried conceiving more of the superior offspring despite knowing that only 1 in 100 survive. The rest die either trapped in their egg or shortly thereafter. Countless children were sacrificed. Bakul Jaja holds the weight of their deaths on his shoulder. He believed that he had to succeed because if he didn't, the deaths of his siblings were meaningless. He doesn't want more children to die, and as Dawnservant, he could have ended the practice. Lamat promises to do everything in her power to help, and they plan to gather the people from the town and rally them. They will listen to Bakul, and in his presence speak freely. Bakul apologizes to Lamat and gives her one of his scales as proof of friendship so that the townsfolk will finally talk to her. We gather townfolk and direct them to Bakul Jaja's location. He tells them that he wants to end the practice of creating blessed siblings, but the people are stuck in their ways and believe that only two-headed Mamul-Jah can lead them to better conditions. Bakul promises them that if they tell Lamat their problems, she will do everything in her power to help. They inform Lamat that the ground is not fertile, and combined with the lack of sunlight, the only crop that grows are bananas. Also, the Yakhoi mined the forest for all its resources, so there is no ore to trade, and the meteorites have no apparent value. Kona figures out that the flora emits its blue glow because they have an affinity to the ether released from the meteorites. Otherwise, the soil is actually fertile. He will use his connections with Old Charlian and have them analyze the meteorite. There, they can cross-reference the various seeds they have stored and find crops that will grow in the lower forest. Realizing that their problems can be solved without faith in a genetic savior, the townsfolk rally behind Lamat. With the problem essentially solved, Wuk Lamat is ready to take on the feat of brotherhood. Back at the location of the trial, Lamat berates the Artok for allowing the practice of eugenics even as the guilt eats away at his people's souls. She swears she will defeat the Dawnservant Shade and prove to him and everyone else that there is a better path. Inspired by his sister, Kona drops out of the contest to join her party. Now, as a party of 8, we take on the final challenge and face the Dawnservant in all his glory. It's easy to see how Galul Jaja managed to do so much in his life before becoming Dawnservant. His ferocity is unmatched, and the magic he's able to wield with the Vow of Reason awake is terrifying. We survive his initial wave of attacks, but then he reveals his trump card, a sword created with the combined magic of reason and resolve imbued with fire. We rally behind Lamat as she single-handedly protects us all. With the Dawnservant defeated, the Shade turns into dust, but the Artok refuses to give Lamat her keystone. Just then, a man named Tankwa shows up. Lamat appears to know him well, but he's a Rogadin, meaning he must be from Eorzea. Alphino immediately realizes that Tankwa is actually Ketenram, which blows Wuk Lamat's mind. Ketenram tries to reason with the Artok, but he's having a tantrum. He scolds Lamat for having helped to complete the feat, but she retorts that we are all her friends. He believes a leader should be able to stand by themselves and have no need for friends. Lamat counters him and says that together, we all can achieve anything. He need not rely on blessed siblings, he just needs friendship and community. Lamat extends a hand to him, and taken aback by her offer, he finally admits the guilt he's felt for sacrificing so many children for his faith. Unsure of how to proceed from now on, he relents and gives Lamat the final keystone. Kona congratulates his sister, then apologizes to Thancred and Urianger for failing the rite of secession. But the Scions are just happy that their charge has matured enough to see the bigger picture. Lamat seeks out Milal-Jah to spread the good news. The townsfolk are thrilled that they will no longer be subject to the barbaric rituals, but still are a bit scared of what this all means now. Lamat assures them that they have nothing to fear. By learning what makes us all different, we can find common ground in places we never expected. We just have to keep an open mind. We accompany Ketenram to his home for some answers. He explains that he's been living down in the lower forest to ensure the peace treaty between the Mamul-Jah and Jibral was maintained. But he doesn't point us in the direction of the Golden City. Fortunately, Crile has figured it out. She recalls that Hunmu Rook wouldn't tell her about her grandfather's brief visit to Ikbrash, and that's because as an anointed elector, he's not allowed to give hints to the location of the City of Gold. Then she points out that people with magical aptitude can receive visions when in the proximity of a strong arcane trigger, meaning that the City of Gold is somewhere in the lower forest. We've got a large area to comb, so we decide to head back to Mamuk and try to find some clues to narrow down the search. But before we leave, Ketnaram stops Erenvel. The young man seems familiar to him, and Ketnaram realizes that he's Kakiwa's son. The old pirate explains that she told him about him. She tasked Erenvel with finding the City of Gold. Erenvel admits to everything. He tried searching for it in his youth, but never got close to finding it and gave up. Ketnaram encourages him to continue on because he's so close now. Back in Mamuk, the rest of the party tells us how nice everyone is to them now. They mended our gear and gave Lamat a bunch of free food. Milao Jah and Surreal Jah, the Artark, approach us. While the Artark can't give us any clues, his wife is unrestrained. Milao explains to us that the Mamul Jah have explored every inch of the lower forest except for one. The chamber connected to the stone pier created by the Yakoi, the Sky Deep Cenote. We enter the dungeon and fight our way through the wildlife as we delve deeper. The environment inside changes and we begin to face defensive golems. Off in the distance we can see a golden doorway and we fight our way to it. And when we're just a short distance away, the final protector blocks the way. The Maul Skull is a behemoth that emits an unusual purple glow and it absorbs golden energy from the walls surrounding us before it attacks. But our party, seasoned from all the trials, defeat it. Trial points out that the surrounding stone doesn't appear to be of any of the Turali culture. Erenvel confirms that he's never seen anything like this before. They suspect that it could be ancient technology, leading Alizé to believe it to be Allegan. But Alphino notes that they've never seen any Allegan designs like this. With the door to the Golden City within our reach, we venture into the unknown. A Charlian seal blocks the doorway, so Lamat places her 7 tablets and keystones on a pedestal and unlocks the seal. The door behind it opens and we enter into a room of high-tech design. At the far end sits a sealed portal. Everyone is confused because this looks nothing like what the Yakoi described. But we're interrupted by the Dawnservant himself. He's come to personally congratulate Lamat. With the rite of succession complete, Trial looks up to the Dawnservant for answers. She wonders what's behind the gate. Galul Jaja tells her that the Golden City lies on the other side, but circumstances prevent them from opening the gate. He promises Lamat that he will tell her what the city is and what Galuf Baldessian discovered after her ascension to Dawnservant. Then she can do with that information what she wants. Back in Tuliolao, Lamat prepares for her ascension ceremony. As we rest in our room at the inn, Kona visits us and thanks us for helping his sister realize her potential and guiding her. He came to inform us that Lamat wishes us to accept a position within her administration upon becoming Dawnservant. We don't need to answer now, but she'll approach us after the ceremony. Finally comes the day of ascension. Galul Jaja addresses the entire city in front of the palace, but he wastes little time before introducing the new Dawnservant, Wuk Lamat. She admits to her people that before she began the rite of succession, she thought she knew everything about her people, but her journey showed her how much she had yet to learn. The Hanu Hanu taught her how they care for and cultivate their land and how welcoming they are to visitors. The Pelu Pelu showed her the depths of their patience, when to push through and when not to push your luck. The Moblins taught her the power of creativity and that when filled with passion and supported by others, we do our best work. She was moved by the history of the Yakoi and learned that we live on as long as we're remembered. She tasted the harmony that ended a centuries-long war between the Jabral and Mamulja in Yaktel when she ate Zibruk Pibil. And she felt sorrow in Mamuk when she met with the people who suffered when placing their faith in blessed siblings. As she's come to know the nation, she realizes that there are still problems to fix, and not everyone lives in peace and prosperity. And still, there's people and places in Tural she hasn't met and never seen. She hopes with everyone's help they can build a nation where everyone knows happiness, because their happiness is her happiness. Lamat leaps from the palace to the ground with her subjects. She tells everyone that her father led the nation with 2 heads, resolve and reason. To better lead Tural, she needs someone with the knowledge and insight that she lacks, so she asks Kona to be Dawnservant with her. Kona addresses the people. While he introduced foreign innovation to Tural, such as airships in the south and trains in the north as a means of deterring foreign invasion, the trials made him realize that he was too eager to cast aside the culture of the very people he wants to protect. Now, with everyone's blessing, he vows to help Tuliyollal prosper while honoring its people's heritage. Lamat then unveils a monument of Tural's history, depicting the Lay of Legacy where she and Kona become the next Dawnservant. Galul Jaja comes down to join the new Dawnservants and says that his brother would have been proud. He pulls the cover off his brother's head and reveals that he passed away 3 years prior. He apologizes for not telling anyone, even his children. He just wanted the people to rest easy until a new Dawnservant could be chosen. Planning the rite of succession was his brother's final act, and he did well. As Galul Jaja's final address to his people, he blesses the new Dawnservants. But sometime after we left the lower forest of Yaktael, Ketenram was attacked as he returned to his home by an unknown assailant. After the ceremony, Lamat meets with us in the palace courtyard. With everything we've been through together, she insists that we address her by her familial name, Lamati. She then asks just us to join her as she makes her rounds as Dawnservant to thank all the electors that are in Tuliyollal. She's able to find everyone except Ketenram. Saril Ja and Hanmu Rook inform her that they haven't seen the sailor or Zaral Ja. When we rejoin the other Scions, Lamati asks us to stay in Tuliyollal with her. She gives us a permit for passage to Tural, the area to the north, a place we haven't explored yet. Lamati thanks us all for helping her and promises Crescendo that as soon as her father tells her the details of Galuf's expedition to the City of Gold, she will pass along the information. Alphino and Alice decide to stay in Tural a bit longer to learn more about the continent. Crescendo will stay in Tuliyollal, and we decide to explore Tural. Erenvel offers to join us as he visits his hometown to meet with his mentor, and with that, we all part. During Wuk Lamat's coronation, Zaral Ja entered the Sky Deep cenote, placed 7 tablets with their keystones on the podium, and opened the gate to the Golden City. Saril Ja gloats about stealing spare keystones from Ketenram before giving Zaral a strange device stolen from the Dawnservant's treasure vault. As soon as Zaral touches it, the portal lights up and the voice speaks to him from the other side. The voice informs Zaral that the key he holds is the only way to connect their worlds. Thuril asks if the voice is the guardian of the city's power, and it replies that they don't claim the power to be great, but the knowledge they possess is enough to remake worlds. Intrigued, Zaralja tells the voice that what he wants is the world. Then he cuts down Sarilja as he is of no use to him any longer. Zaral expresses that he desires a world that will bend to his will alone, and the voice simply replies, "As you wish, but in exchange." In the present, Erenvel guides us across the Great Bridge to Tural. We arrive in the desert wilds of Shaloni, meaning where the sun guides us in the Chitona tongue, the Wild West, so to speak. Here, ceruleum is pumped from the ground where it is processed and used as fuel in Tuliyollal. We attempt to rent a Ronik to ride to the station and catch a train to Yasilani, but the handler tells us that an ominous storm spooked most of his working animals, and combined with a rash of banditry, there is a waiting list. In the meantime, we decide to wait at Husatawi, the nearest town. Upon entering, a young man named Zekua publicly accuses a member of the local law enforcement of framing and arresting his friends. Estinian advises him not to fight, so Zekua runs off as the sheriff arrives to investigate the ruckus. We briefly catch up with the Dragoon and find out that he's decided to explore Tural by himself. In the next town, Shishinuizi Springs, Erenvel introduces us to Ayate. She's known as mentor ever since they were children. She calls Erenvel by his birth name, Elenechbia. He admits that he adopted the name Erenvel while in Eorzea because it confirmed with the Viera. Ayate reveals that Erenvel's mentor is actually his mother and a member of Galul Jaja's legendary party. But our conversation is interrupted by a scream for help. Bandits mugged a middle-aged woman and stole her bracelet. Erenvel identifies the woman as Namika, Wuk Lamat's nursemaid, and the stolen bracelet is a gift from the Dawnservant. Namika tells us that she was headed back to her hometown of Yasilani, but is distraught and doesn't want to move on without recovering her cherished gift. We track the bandits to a shanty town in the middle of the desert with no coverage, suspicious as to how the Dust Watch never found this hideout. We prepare to introduce them to their ancestors, but Erenvel stops us from breaking the local law. We plan on stealing her jewelry back, so we eavesdrop to find out where the stash is. But we don't get any clues, but we do find out that their boss is a member of the Dust Watch. We use an animal attractant to lure predators to the camp and scare off the bandits. But before we can get inside the building and start searching, the lawman we saw earlier emerges from one of them, and Zekawa, who was coincidentally searching for evidence to free his friends, accidentally blows our cover. Erenvel is spotted, so we retreat. Away from the bandits, Zekawa tells us that the gang is called the Daybreakers, and he used to be their leader. They were peacekeepers when he was in charge. Eventually, the lawman, Deputy Chief Wahute, took over. Zekawa challenged him to a duel for control, but on the day of the duel, the bandit leader used his official role to arrest Zekawa's friends instead. The young man explains Wahute's entire operation. The bandits steal from the townspeople, but the spoils are actually stashed in the town. Then they're smuggled into Tuliolao, packed alongside the ceruleum shipments. We trick Wahute into suddenly leaving Husatawi and wandering the desert so Erenvel can find the bracelet. Frustrated that we wasted his time, the lawman rushes back to town where he's publicly outed by Zekawa. Erenvel reveals a container filled with the residents' stolen items for all to see. Wahute denies knowing anything, so Zekawa challenges him to a duel. After a comically long and intense stare-down, Wahute draws his weapon, but Zekawa shoots the gun out of his hand. The chief deputy falls to the ground, and Amika's bracelet tumbles out of his pocket. Caught red-handed, the sheriff takes the disgraced deputy away. We return the bracelet to Namika, and Zekawa's friends get released from jail. They thank us, and we let them know that we'll be moving on to Yasselani now. But Ayate informs us that the train is out of service. Not long before we arrived in Shaloni, there was an earthquake that destroyed the track. We asked the railroad engineer when the train is going to be in service again, but he doesn't know because they don't have enough people to inspect and repair the track. Erenvel believes that if the earthquake was as strong as implied, we should have felt it in Tuliolao. But the engineer clarifies that the quake felt different, like the rumbling from an explosion in the distance. We help get the train up and running again in record time, but it's too packed for us to board, but we hope Namika was at least able to get a seat. As we wait for the train to return from Yasselani, there's a shift in the air and the Ronique gets spooked. The ground begins to shake and sparks of electricity flicker in the air. Suddenly, a massive explosion in Yasselani temporarily blinds us. A large purple dome looms over the horizon, and a squadron of flying warships head in our direction. They quickly pass over us en route to Tuliolao. Although Erenvel desperately wants to know what happened to his mother and his home, he insists we rush back to the capital. By the time we return, the capital is a war zone. Citizens lie on the ground gravely injured or already dead. A hysterical Wuk Lamat meets us at the northern gate and rallies us to protect as many people as possible. Alisei fights mechanical soldiers while Alphino does his best to keep as many people as he can alive. The machines make firing lines and kill indiscriminately. Cryo watches as one absorbs a blue and a red orb of ether from a dead body and store it in a canister. Akul Jaja leaps into battle saving whomever he can, and when we try to fight alongside him, he tells us to fall back to the palace while he holds the line. As we run back to the palace, we spot a guilt-ridden woman wearing unusual clothing, observing the chaos from a distance. And inside the palace, we find all the guards slain. Hettenram stands by as Galul Jaja and Zoralja prepare to duel. Zoral appears different, older. His body is infused with purple energy, covered in arcane etchings, and he wears mechanical armor. He says he's surprised his father is still alive and demands the dissolution of Tuliolao and his territory surrendered, or he will kill everyone. Galul Jaja is saddened, disappointed, and furious. He doesn't recognize the monster before him. Feeling solely responsible for his son's actions, he wants to fight Zoralja alone. Tural leaps into the air and delivers a downward thrust that Galul easily shrugs off. The former Dawnservant, in his old age, is still his better. Galul Jaja overpowers his son and lands a heavy blow. With his son defenseless, the father apologizes before landing the killing blow. As Zoralja lies motionless on the floor, a device on his head activates and his body becomes covered in a white aura. His eyes open and he gets back to his feet. He says that since his father fights with the vitality of two souls, he'll even the odds. The device's color changes from blue to red, and Zoral emits a red aura. He attacks so fast that Galul Jaja is unable to block, and he follows with an upward slash that breaks his father's defense, then delivers a fatal blow to the heart. Galul Jaja falls. Wuk Lamat attacks her brother, but he easily swats her away. She swears on her life that she'll do anything to kill him. Zoralja, amused, issues a challenge. Build an army, lay siege to his kingdom, and strike him down. Before leaving, he declares that his warships will remain over Tural, and when Lamat fails, he'll level the capital and kill everyone within its walls. Galul Jaja hangs on, but he's beyond saving. As his final request, he asks Ketnaram to watch over his children. He then reminds his children of the Yakoi belief. Through them, he'll survive, and through them, he'll live on. With his final breath, he tells his children to not mourn him, but to walk tall and see the nation to a brighter future. With the ground troops withdrawn, we begin the relief efforts. Wuk Lamat is disgusted to find that even children were targeted. After surveying the city, we come to the conclusion that the people were the primary target. All the structural damage is just incidental. We try to report our findings to Lamat, but we find her weeping inconsolably over the body of a citizen that passed away in her arms. Alizé tells her to let us tend to the citizens because she needs rest. She warns that if there's a follow-up attack, Lamat's people will need her to be sharp. Wuk Lamat calls herself a failure, but we reassure her that there was no way she could have been prepared for this unprovoked attack. She stares at the warships that hover over Tuliolao, understanding that there will be no reasoning with Zaralja. She must kill her brother. Back in the palace, we compile information and formulate a plan of attack. Grahatia and Nishtola bring their expertise to the group. Based on the information Galul Jaja told Lamat about the Golden City, Cryo believes the dome over Yasalani is connected to it, and the Golden City is actually another reflection, one of the 14 sundered pieces of Aetheris. Ketnaram recalls the day Galuf visited the ruins. His words send us into an echo-induced vision. As Galuf, Ketnaram, and Galul Jaja were investigating, the walls begin to glow. Electricity flickered in the air, and then the walls moved to reveal the gate and an open portal. A solemn Lalafell woman exited. She handed her baby to Galuf, while the male handed Ketnaram the key to the gate. They then ran back through the portal before it closed. They didn't know how to activate the artifact, but they could tell that it was made from the same black stone that covered the ruins. For safety, they vaulted it at the palace, and Galuf returned to Charlian with the child. Cryo reveals that the earring she wears was amongst the swaddling clothes. She is from another world. Ketnaram connects the dots, and everything points to Zaralja opening the gate. He was attacked by a blue-skinned Hubigo, and Zaral is the only one in existence. Only blessed siblings could sire a child with the color of a Bunawa and the body of a Hubigo. During the coronation, the key was also stolen from the palace. Somehow, Zaral manifested the dome here from the reflection. Lamat decides to infiltrate the dome and kill her brother. Before we leave the city, the vow of resolve addresses the people. She reveals that Zaralja is the enemy leader and assures everyone that she will take the battle straight to him and protect the city. But everyone will need to work together to defend the city while she's gone, and Kona will take charge of the city's defenses. But the Turali are still in mourning, and their morale is low. Bakul Jaja breaks the silence with a maniacal laugh. He commends Wuk Lamat's excellent plan and pledges his sword to protect his home. He asks them, will they let others do the work, or will they work to protect their home as well? One by one, the citizens commit, and with their morale raised, Lamat is ready for the fight ahead. We check in on the residents of Shaloni as we make our way north and find evidence that Astinian helped fight the machines. A railroad clerk tells us that they've recovered the train outside the dome and that the conductor was the only person to return from the trip. Ishtola and Alphino meet us at the train station and determine that the dome is made of condensed lightning and touching it is fatal. The workers tell us that the track now leads to an entrance to the dome, a fortress that straddles its edge. Wuk Lamat suggests the bold strategy of charging in head-on so Zaralja focuses on her and not Tuliolao. The chief engineer likes the idea and ups the ante. He suggests loading the train with cerulean fuel and running it into the fortress. Everyone looks at him like he's a lunatic, but the plan is so crazy it just might work. We add fortifications made of wood and install grounding rods to nullify the enemy's lightning-based attacks. Then we mount etheric cannons as countermeasures and couple several cars filled with fuel. We turn the train into a 100-ton bomb on tracks. Graha casts a concealment spell on the train and we take off. As soon as the spell wears off, we're met with heavy resistance. At first, they're unable to break through our defenses, and Cryo, Raha, and Alizé blast the machines out of the sky. But they switch to firearms and set one of the cars ablaze. Alizé separates the coupling just before it explodes and is nearly blown off the roof. The next wave focuses on blowing up our remaining cars. Erenvel mans a cannon while Wuk Lamat deflects enemy bullets long enough to get in range. We bail and the train collides into the fortress, exploding into an enormous blue fireball. With the door now open, we enter the Vanguard. The interior is almost completely protected by various machines. The only person we meet is Xander the Snake Skinner, and we easily take him out. Too easily. Like Zoralja, he gets revived. Rahatia says that resurrection magic wasn't used. The soldier calls on the soul of the serpent, emits a red aura, and then mutates into a snake-human hybrid. He's bigger, stronger, and faster than before, and when we defeat him, his body vanishes like dispersed ether. We finally enter the unusual atmosphere of the dome. It's nighttime and there's constant lightning in the sky. Erenvel recognizes the terrain, but not the massive tower to the north and the countless structures made of black material. Raha guesses that we were transported somewhere else, but we find Yasalani Station where it should be. It's just falling apart. The train tracks have thick layers of rust on them. None of this is making any sense because Erenvel told us that the station is only a year old. Alice concludes that time must flow differently within the dome. Raha explains to Erenvel and Lamat that the Scions experienced this type of temporal flux when we were transferred to the first. Lamat suggests we go to Erenvel's village to confirm where we are. His home is in ruins. As Erenvel tries to wrap his head around all of this, a woman asks us if we need help. We immediately recognize her from the invasion. She's Sphene, the Queen of Reason, here to welcome us to the domain of Alexandria where she reigns with the King of Resolve, Zoralja. Wuk Lamat and Alize immediately draw their weapons, but Sphene says that she came here for help. She ruled alone until one day Tural appeared and attempted to conquer her lands and kill her people. Fearing his power, she struck a deal with him to remain queen and spare her people in exchange for technology and the knowledge for how to use it. Erenvel doesn't care and demands to know where she came from and what happened to the people of his village. Sphene tells him that she doesn't know. One day the people of Yasalani appeared in Alexandria. At least that's what she thought until recently. Unable to leave the barrier, she just assumed they were on her world. Raha likens the situation to when his future self used the Crystal Tower to transport through time and space from the source to the first, but on a much larger scale. Sphene offers to take us to the outskirts, where some Shatona live, in hopes that Erenvel may find people that he knows. Although we feel like we're walking into a trap, for his peace of mind, we agree to accompany her. All the residents of the outskirts warmly welcome their queen. She knows everyone by name, and her personability reminds Alice of Lamat. She introduces us as honored guests from beyond the barrier. We notice that everyone here wears that device on their head, except for the queen. Erenvel looks for anyone familiar and asks if they know ffxiv, but no one recognizes the name. When he reveals that she's his mother, Queen Sphene suddenly says that she can see the resemblance. Erenvel begs her for his mother's whereabouts, but when Sphene notices a machine within earshot, she says she can't tell him at this moment. Wuk Lamat asks a man originally from Yasalani what he experienced on the day that the dome appeared, but he says he can't completely remember because it's been 30 years. Sphene confirms that they've been in the dome for that long. They were stuck inside the dome until Zoralja completed his military base and created a means for them to leave. That was when she learned that she was on another world and that there was a temporal discrepancy. This is why Zoralja assumed his father was dead. We seek to learn more about this place, and the residents teach us about the Black Stone. Electrope it's called. It's extremely versatile, but when Sphene notices townsfolk converging on a home, she leads us to the building with a sense of urgency. Inside, an elderly woman sits on death's doorstep and stares at the floor. Queen Sphene kneels before the woman and holds her hand to comfort her. The old woman strains, but eventually says Wuk. In that moment, Lamat recognizes the bracelet on the woman's wrist. Lamat is aghast. It's Namika. While it's only been a few days for us, Namika aged another 30 years. One villager asks if she can use any more soul cells, but is told that at her age, it wouldn't work. Sphene embraces Namika and thanks her for the many years of friendship. She tells Namika to take comfort in the knowledge that this is not the end and to not be afraid, because her memory will live on in us. Her words are similar to the Yakoi beliefs. Sphene tells us that Namika will be escorted to a medical facility in the tower where her burden will be eased until she passes. Lamat explains that Namika is like a mother to her and asks for a few moments with her. After a little while, Lamat emerges from the house grateful that she can be there for Namika at the end. Sphene creepily smiles at Lamat and says it's not the end, making everyone uneasy. Realizing the miscue, Sphene changes the subject and asks Raha what he's learned so far. He believes localized dimensional compression has occurred, merging our worlds under the dome. Alexandria's displacement is far greater than anything that could be done with a Void Gate or the Crystal Tower. This is closer to what the Ascians were trying to achieve with a rejoining. Sphene says she doesn't understand the science of it all. She just knows that they lived peacefully under the barrier for years until suddenly the peace was broken. Tural deduces that the barrier was erected before the displacement, and the Queen confirms it. It's been in operation for hundreds of years after the Great Cataclysm devastated the continent. Tural presses for clarification that it was only later that Alexandria was brought here by means unknown. Lamat chalks it up to meaning the Alexandrians didn't intentionally come to Tural. The Queen's stare borders on the uncanny valley before she snaps into a smile and replies, "But of course." She then invites us to Everkeep, the tower north of the outskirts. She will register us as guests, and inside we can see firsthand how Alexandria operates. Before she leaves, she admits that she will not be able to take us to Zoraljah. The confession perks Lamat's ears and she stops the Queen. She asks if Sphene would really stand aside and allow the king to be assassinated. The Queen of Reason's demeanor hardens. She replies that she will do everything in her power to keep her people safe. She then looks around to make sure no one is listening and tells Erenvel to look for Kekiwa in the Thunder Yards to the east before departing. While the others talk amongst themselves, we notice the lights on the villager's device blink. Lamat thanks the man for being Namika's friend for the last 30 years, but he's confused. He doesn't know anyone by that name. No one remembers Namika, not even her caregiver. This can't be magic because we would have sensed the tremendous amount of ether needed to alter this many minds at once. Alisaie also noticed the villager's device began to blink, and we all think it may have something to do with the soul cells we heard about. But we know we won't get a straight answer from Sphene, so we decide to head to the Thunder Yards and look for Kekiwa. As Erenvel gets our bearings, he notices the machine watching us. Lamat identifies it as a mechanical soldier and wants to destroy it. It understands us because it reacts with fear and runs away. It flees in the direction that we're heading, so we track it to a mine shaft. We find ourselves in a hideout, but when we corner it, we're surrounded. A woman's voice calls out from the machine, Eleneshpia. The voice then becomes bubbly and calls him her darling. It signals to its allies to put down their weapons and inspects Erenvel in a way that only a doting mother can. It says it's so happy to see her fussy little bun-bun. Shocked and annoyed, but more annoyed, Erenvel introduces everyone to Kekiwa. We ask why she's speaking from a machine, and she tells us it's to protect her location because she's the leader of Oblivion. Originally formed centuries ago to prevent a dimensional merge, they are now focused on stopping Zoraljah. No one in Oblivion wears a device on their head called a regulator. Regulators manage the wearer's reserve souls. If they die, the regulator expends a soul and brings them back to life. Spare souls are packed into cells and used to replenish life force after sudden death, but they won't help those that die of old age. Citizens earn credits through their work and contribution to Alexandria and can exchange them to buy soul cells. It's akin to how Voidsent consume others for ether to replenish and empower their own life force. But the American way, with capitalism. We inquire if the wearer loses a sense of self like the Voidsent, but we learn they don't because the regulators refresh their memories during the revival process. They also trigger when someone else dies. It extracts the memories of the deceased so no one suffers loss. When someone dies, their soul goes to the regulator and then delivered to a facility where the memories are extracted. The clean soul is packaged and stored in a cell for distribution, while the memories go to the cloud to be remembered forever. This system, like the barrier, was created in response to a calamity on their world. A hunter demonstrates another way the regulator can be used. Her regulator turns red, and she's engulfed in a red empowering aura. She blitzes the beast and hits it so hard, she lifts it into the air before delivering a powerful blow that sends it crashing to the earth dead. It's just like when Zoraljah fought his father. Beast souls can be used to empower the wearer, but overconsumption has side effects, from minor physical changes like growing fangs to becoming more beast than man, like Xander in the Vanguard. While Alexandria appears to be a utopia for its citizens, beneath the surface, it's disturbing. Lamat wants to join Oblivion, but Erenvel is skeptical. Until he sees his mother, he's not certain we're not falling for a trap created by Sphene. Wuk Lamat agrees, but rationalizes that we need to know more. Something is going unsaid, and we intend to figure out what that is. Back at the hideout, we're welcomed into Oblivion. They share the little intel they have on Zeralja with us. He resides on the 12th tier of the tower, he never goes out in public, and his movements are classified to even his commanders. The only way to reach him is through Queen Sphene or by drawing him out. We know Sphene won't help us get to him, so Lamat chooses the second option. She'll make herself obvious in his domain, but show no interest in attacking him. Eventually, he'll grow tired of waiting and turn his attention to Tural. Since the Vanguard is his only way out of the dome, Zeralja will have no choice but to expose himself, and that's when we'll get him. Raha relays the plan via Link Pearl so Kona can prepare the city. Kekiwa wants to take us to Oblivion's main headquarters inside Solution 9, but she's unsure how to get us inside the tower. We reveal that Sphene already registered us as guests, which confuses Kekiwa. She says Sphene doesn't have access to the entries, but we won't know until we try. In Everkeep, Zeralja confronts Sphene over consorting with Wuk Lamat. He reminds the queen that he's the only person helping her. She needs his power, not the other way around. Sphene empathizes with Lamat's love for her people and tries to convince Tural to make Lamat an ally, even suggesting that the arcane knowledge the Scions possess could be of use. She wants a peaceful path forward and finds it disturbing that Zeralja wants to kill his brother and sister. The King of Resolve does not see them as family. His only motivation in life was proving he was superior to his father, but when he finally slew him, the victory was hollow. He just defeated an old man, while the Dawnservants defeated Galul Jaja as he was in his prime. He must defeat his siblings to prove his worth. Sphene tries to point out how insane he sounds, but he cuts her off and threatens that if she wishes to protect her family from him, she better fall in line. We're granted access into Everkeep as Sphene promised. Of the tower's 12 tiers, we enter Solution 9. The futuristic cyber utopia is nothing like we've ever seen before, and the buildings are larger than anything we've imagined. Everything is comprised of electrope. Kekiwa suggests we explore the district, and once we're done, go to the eastern sector to be guided to the Oblivion headquarters. Erenvel asks his mother where she is, but she says she still can't reveal that yet. We join Wuk Lamat to explore, and Sphene promptly locates us. He immediately asks Lamat to make peace with Zeralja and receives a curt no in response. Lamat reminds the queen that she's trying to protect her people from him, but Sphene advises Lamat to return to Tuliolao and prepare for another attack by her brother. Lamat shakes her head. She isn't worried because things are taken care of at the capital. She says she hasn't decided whether or not she trusts Sphene yet, so to get to know her better, the queen should give us a tour. Sphene shows us her domain and explains how electrope works. Etching arcane circuits on the ore converts lightning energy into other elements. Wind conversion produces flotation, which is how their vehicles fly, and fire produces light and heat. The circuits can even be combined for different effects. Manipulating the air with wind while projecting light with lightning can alter a person's appearance. Lamat is amazed and realizes that if electrope existed on our world, everyone would fight over it. The comment sends Sphene into an uncomfortable silence. She takes us to a residential unit to check in on a boy afflicted with Levin sickness, a severe etheric imbalance towards lightning. He suffers from paralysis, cannot walk, and struggles to speak. Because of the excess lightning in the environment, many children over the generations have been born with it. Unfortunately, the soul cells can't cure the illness. Sphene blames herself, but we don't understand why. Resolution is the last stop on our tour. It's the government sector where the district is managed, social programs are provided, and citizens can exchange their credits for soul cells. We think the concept is dystopian, but Lamat expresses that she will keep an open mind. She wants to understand Alexandria, not judge it. Lamat wants to know about Alexandria's history. We learned that over 1,000 years ago, lightning energy began to swell, causing severe thunderstorms. Over time, the rainy season became perpetual, and underneath the constant cover of clouds and lightning, crops failed and the livestock starved. Suddenly one day, electrope was discovered. With endless lightning and the ore's versatility, people's lives improved. Soon, everyone became dependent on it. But as the supply became scarce, countless countries invaded others for their ore deposits. It was then incorporated into warfare. Before long, every nation fought over electrope, using weapons made of electrope to attack defenses made of electrope, fought by soldiers wearing electrope armor. The war became known as the Storm Surge. Alexandria's neighbor, Lindblom, used all of their deposits to create a weapon of mass destruction. Its detonation released lightning energy that vaporized the entire continent. After, Alexandrian scientists then developed the means to separate and store an individual's memory and soul. Physical death no longer meant the end, in so long that the memories were preserved. A man approaches the queen and begs for an additional soul cell, but a bureaucrat butts in and tells Sphene that he can't afford one because he doesn't work and he does not contribute. The man explains that he was a fighter in the arena, and the king's decree closed the arena down, leaving him jobless. Sphene says that unfortunately she can't give him preferential treatment or override the king's decree because Zoralja needs the beast souls from the arena for his army. He curses the queen, and she lets out a small yet sinister laugh before talking some sense into him. The man apologizes and calms himself by saying that he'll just never leave Solution 9 just to be safe. We leave Resolution, but the interaction weighs heavy on Lamat. She asks if the man's frantic reaction to running out of souls is normal. Sphene admits that it's unavoidable. People are accustomed to having spare souls, and without them, they become anxious. Lamat wonders if it's possible to do away with the system, and Sphene coldly says no. Lamat says beliefs can change, and once Zoralja is gone, Sphene will rule alone again, and she can make the change. The queen appears to want to confess something, but she changes the topic and ends the tour. We notice the tonal change and stare daggers into her, but Lamat simply smiles and waves goodbye. We arrive in the eastern sector, True View, only to notice a young, blue-scaled Hubigo spying on us. When he realizes he's been made, he runs off. We conclude that the child would have to be Zoral's. Without saying a word, the boy appears back in front of us and leads us to the bar that houses Oblivion's headquarters, the back room. Trial, Graha, Erenvel, and Alize are already inside. Yakiwa explains that the members of the back room are mostly scientists and engineers that provide support to the field operatives. She explains that Oblivion was created by the founders of Preservation, the organization that revolutionized electrope technology. They were behind Everkeep's design, soul management, and interdimensional fusion. The founders, however, a husband and wife, opposed the fusing of worlds and defected. One of the agents interrupts us to ask Kryl about her earring. A body scan revealed that it contained a small amount of electrope. It's a data storage device. Kryl explains her origin to the group, which makes ffxiv realize that she may be the daughter of their founders. As traitors to Preservation, they were hunted down, so it would make sense for them to entrust their child to people in another world. While we wait for Zoralja to make his next move, the scientists work to decrypt the information on the storage device. ffxiv confirms that the young Mamulja boy is Zoral's son. He was abandoned and found in the gutter at an age so young he doesn't remember his parents, but they're sure he put two and two together. Ever since finding him, the members of Oblivion have been keeping an eye on him. ffxiv named him Galuja and tried to raise him as her own, but he has a habit of disappearing into the wilds. They would go through the cycle of finding him, bringing him back, and then losing him again in a few days. They learn to just let him be. If he asks for help, they do whatever they can, and when he wants to be alone, they back off. Lamat offers to take Galuja in, but realizes that could be a problem because she's here to kill his father. Unfortunately, the boy overhears that and runs away in fear. We track him to ruins that appear to be made of Charlian architecture. When we approach, we're stopped by an ancient-looking sentry. The articulate sentry protects the boy from us. Lamat apologizes to Galuja for scaring him and says she only wants to get to know him. The boy agrees and tells us the sentry named Otis is his caretaker. Otis taught Galuja how to read, write, he cooks for him, and taught him how to survive in the wilds. We don't understand how a machine is capable of this level of versatility considering all the others are emotionless. The sentry introduces himself as Sir Otis Valona, Lord Captain of the Royal Knights of Alexandria, and this machine has been his vessel for over 380 years. Otis treats us all to dinner, and Lamat tells Galuja about his grandfather and how they're related. Otis tells us how he came to be. He was once a flesh and blood knight tasked with protecting the king, queen, and princess. When the Lindblom weapon detonated, countless Alexandrians perished, including the king and queen. The princess became the queen and united her country with hope and kindness. She even took in refugees from Lindblom. Unfortunately, her reign was short, and as she lay on her deathbed, her soul was extracted. The belief that being remembered means living forever comforted the Alexandrians, so with Electrope, they worked on a way to make their belief a reality. After successfully preserving a soul with its memory, the next step was to recreate a person as they were in life, requiring memories to be separated from the soul. Even as Otis grew to be an old man, they hadn't perfected the memory extraction, so with his days numbered, he volunteered to be a test subject for the transfer procedure. His soul and memories were successfully transferred into this century, and this paved the way for the others recreated from the memories of the departed, the Endless. A realization washes over us. We ask if the Queen's name was Sphene, and he confirms. The entire time, the Sphene we've been talking to is an Endless. Otis explains that the Endless inherit all of the memories of the departed soul, so they behave exactly as the person would, so he considers them to be alive. We wonder if the people of Alexandria know about them, or if they themselves are Endless, or if they even question why the Queen never ages. Galulja says that the people just accept Sphene as she is, without question. Otis lets us know that the Endless are limited to where they can exist, and only Queen Sphene has been able to go anywhere. He reiterates that he himself is not Endless because his entire soul was placed into the Century, while the Endless are just the memories. If his body is destroyed, he would be lost. We suspect that all this time Kakiwa knew about the Endless but kept the information from us. We need to talk to our team, so we rush back to Crescendo and Graha in the tower. In Solution 9, Erenvel runs into someone from his village who now dons a regulator. He asks if they saw his mother, but they can't remember her. They point him to another villager who also doesn't remember his mother. Erenvel realizes Kakiwa is dead. En route to Everkeep, we run into Sphene and ask her about the Endless. She says the citizens know about them, and she doesn't hide the fact that her appearance never changes. She cares about the Endless as much as the living citizens, but sustaining the Endless has a particular requirement. If any more living citizens die, her system will be pushed to its brink. Lamat offers to help in any way she can. So the Queen asks us to become citizens of Alexandria. Wuk Lamat doesn't understand what the Queen is angling for, because every time she pauses like that, it's a misdirection. We ask her directly, exactly what does Zoralja provide her kingdom? But Sphene refuses to answer. She wishes we were born on the same side of it, an illusion that we take to mean that we're adversaries. The Queen then runs away. We meet Otis at the front of the tower and try to convince Otis to go inside and see Sphene, but he declines out of shame. He failed to protect the Queen and he can't bear to show his face. But our conversation is cut short when a resistance member runs up to us panting. Oblivion's communications are jammed and she ran here to tell us that Zoralja marches to the vanguard now. He's going to invade Tuliolao. The operative's sister is still at the vanguard, and there's no way to know if she's safe. We instruct her to report to the back room, and Alizé contacts the capital via Link Pearl. Otis tasks Galulja to help him evacuate the outskirts to keep him out of the way. Meanwhile, Alizé successfully contacts her brother and reports that the capital is prepared. Before we take off for the vanguard, Lamat tells us to let her fight her brother alone. We have two priorities. One, keep Zoralja distracted and within the dome, and two, free the potential hostage. If we join in on the attack, he'll just leave and attack Tuliolao. With a better understanding of Alexandrian culture, she plans to destroy her brother's regulator and then see if he truly wants to fight. Outside of the vanguard, Zoralja holds the Oblivion member hostage while the king admonishes Lamat for running around with the resistance instead of coming to fight. Lamat demands that he release the woman so they can fight now. She's released, and as she runs towards us, he tries to kill her. Lamat lunges at her brother and holds him to a stalemate. Then she thrusts and pushes him back to his surprise. She declares that she's going to end his reign of terror for her and Sphene's people. The king just laughs. He reveals that this is all Sphene's doing. Her objective is to harvest all life outside the barrier. Lamat can't believe what she's hearing, but Sphene shows up and admits that Zoralja speaks the truth. The attack on Tuliolao was as much her idea as it was Zoralja's. That's why the residents were the targets. The only way to save the Alexandrians is to take the lives of the Turali. Tural cuts down Sphene only to reveal that she's an illusion over a machine, and she immediately takes over another one. Understanding that the Endless are perfect copies of the original person, Lamat tries to appeal to Sphene's humanity. She asks if Sphene truly feels nothing when she talks about slaughtering the people of Tural. We remember the guilty look on her face during the invasion, and then the cold, emotionless turn she would occasionally take. We come to realize that there are two personalities or entities fighting within her. We ask Sphene what she's protecting her people from, but Zoralja cuts her off and knocks Lamat back. He calls her a weak ruler, and Lamat takes the opportunity to break his regulator. Infuriated, Zoralja gives the order to raise Tural and harvest the souls. He boasts that the capital will be ash before the day is done, but Wuk Lamat just smiles and reminds him that there's more than one Dawnservant. In southern Shaloni, the sheriff of the Dust Watch and Ashtola take on the ground troops. In central, Zekawa's Daybreakers and Estinian defend Shishinuizi Springs. In the north, Thancred and Urianje fight alongside the Hetsaro and Menwahetsoan. And in the capital, mages shoot the machines out of the sky, the Landsguard and Bakul Jaja tear apart the ground troops, and Alphino and Kettenram fight at the north gate. The sailor asks what's the plan for the warships. Suddenly, Vitra flies onto the scene and starts blasting. He takes out the supporting ships and then focuses on the main battleship. Alphino reveals that Valkona entered into an alliance with Razat Han. Vitra lets out a bellowing roar and more dragons enter the battle, while Kona and Nazdaja watch from the palace. Zoralja receives a report that his troops have been forced to withdraw, so he cuts his lieutenant down. Wuk Lamat and Queen Sphene are horrified. The soldier's regulator revives him and he pleads with his king. Sphene stands between them and orders Zoralja to stop, but the king slices through both of them. When the man doesn't rise, Zoralja takes his regulator. Sphene takes over another machine and asks if the king has gone mad. He says it's his job to achieve victory by any means necessary. Then he orders his soldiers to execute all the civilians in Everkeep and commandeer their souls. Galuja calls out for his father to stop. Lamat tells the boy to stay back, but when Zoralja hears the boy's name, he grabs the child by the throat and picks him up off the ground. Disgusted, he tells him that he is not his father. We inch towards them, but he uses the boy as a shield. Otis commands the king to let the boy go, but Zoralja uses his royal authority over the sentry. He tells Otis to kneel before his king, and the machine's programming overrides Otis's personality. His eyes turn red and he follows the command. Zoralja tells Lamat to come to the top of Everkeep to find out who is fit to rule, then teleports away with his hostage. In Solution 9, Zoralja abandons his son in the city while the sentries slaughter the residents. Anyone unlucky to revive in their vicinity is killed again and again. Sphene is frozen with grief. She can't override the king's commands. Lamat scolds her and tells the queen to at least try to be useful because her people are innocent. Trial and Raha fight on the western side with Oblivion while we go to True View. There, we find Otis flanked by other sentries. The queen is dumbstruck when she hears his name. The knight's captain commands the other sentries as they attack us before joining in himself. The queen observes the machine and realizes that it's the Otis that she knew. We wear him down and he appears to deactivate until he goes for a surprise attack on Lamat. Sphene orders him to stop and he freezes in place. As Otis fights his programming, an electrope-infused beast leaps off the roof to crush Sphene, but Otis regains control and protects her. He tells his queen to stand back and he fights with us. When the fiend starts losing the fight, it draws orbs of Levin from the air to empower itself. Overflowing with lightning, it paralyzes us and makes lightning constantly strike down from above. Seeing the queen disabled, Otis forces himself to his feet to protect her and sends out a rejuvenating aura, getting us back to our feet. The lightning strikes continue, and Sphene tells Otis to stop protecting her before he dies. As we slay the beast, Otis's body reaches its limit. He asks if his queen is harmed, then deactivates in the position he protected her in. Heartbroken, Sphene thanks us but says she has urgent duties she needs to perform and abandons us. Raha, Krial, and Kekiwa report that although we cleared Solution 9, the other residential floors suffered heavy casualties. The mages in Oblivion heal the survivors, while we seek out those with the emotional wounds of being killed over and over again. In the back room, we check on Galuja. Today his father denied him, used him as a shield, then abandoned him in a war zone. And he lost Otis, the only father figure he's ever known. He doesn't want to be alone, and Lamat assures him that he's not and he'll never be alone again. She takes the boy to another room to get some rest, and Kekiwa suggests we do the same. But as she speaks, her screen and voice become static. We tell her what just happened. but she says not to worry and get some sleep before we storm the upper floors. Later, Kekiwa briefs us on the operation. She shows us a blueprint of Everkeep and notes that the plans for the 12th tier are confidential, so we don't know what to expect. Currently, the passenger elevators are in emergency mode, so we can't take them to the top. Our plan is to enter the ground floor through Origenics, the soul processing facility. The soul cells are usually stored on the 11th tier, but assuming Zeralja is keeping all the recently harvested souls for himself, they'll go directly from processing to him on the 12th tier. Kekiwa says she'll be guiding us on this op, but before we leave, Erenville asks if she knew that Sphene wasn't endless this whole time. All of Oblivion grimaced because they all kept that information from us. She says she didn't think the information was relevant at the time. He knows that his mother is one too, but he doesn't have the heart to say it. He tries telling us, but he chickens out and just tells us that he'll give us support from the back room. On the pier facing the tower, Kekiwa lays out the infiltration plan. Origenics takes deliveries at specific times, so we enter during one of those intervals. Our allies will cause a distraction and will enter the building so we can take the freight elevator up one level. In the resource collection facility, we'll cross to the other side of the floor and take another freight elevator up. From the soul extraction facility, we'll take a transporter up to the memory separation facility and follow the souls through the soul conveyance circuit to the soul management division. A ride in one of the tubes that delivers the souls to the processing division will take us up another level, and on that level, we just need to cross the enhancement testing grounds. With the way clear, we take an elevator up to where the soul cells are stored on the 11th tier. Of the countless cells we see, the vast majority are empty. Lamat realizes that Zeralja killed one of his own for their regulator, and now it must be primed with thousands, if not tens of thousands of souls. A door suddenly opens behind us and we draw our weapons. Estinian, Alfino, and Ishtola join us. With Tuliolao secure, they're able to help us now. And with nothing else standing in our way, we board the last elevator to the 12th tier. We step out onto the platform in the clouds, and above us looms what appears to be an enormous void gate. Ishtola tells us it isn't a void gate because it doesn't lead to the 13th. It leads to a wholly different reflection altogether. She sends out a blast of wind and reveals Zeralja sitting on his throne. He's glowing with the ether of countless souls and breathes heavy as though he's gorged himself on food. There's a limit to how much ether a being can absorb while keeping their form, and he's far past the limit. He's flowing with enough souls to rival the most powerful void scent. Zeralja stumbles towards us in a drunken manner. Feeling the effects of too many souls, he begins to lose himself. But Lamat reminds him, she is the vow of resolve of Tuliolao, and he is the king of resolve of Alexandria. And now, for the last time, they fight. Refocused, he tells us to hold nothing back, because he plans to burn through all his souls down to the last mote. Zeralja immediately begins expending souls to increase his strength and abilities. He controls them like weapons, spreading the souls of Mamuja from Tural around the battlefield and making them explode. When we bring him to the brink of death, he begins to hallucinate. He sees his father, his son, and his siblings. In a fit of rage, he cuts down the apparitions of Lamat and Kona, then his father, but he hesitates before forcing himself to cut down Galulja. He declares that he trusts only in himself, and he expends all his souls at once, transforming into an unrecognizable monstrosity. With this new form, he controls reality and manipulates the battlefield at will. He snaps us in and out of pocket realities of his creation. We chip away at his final life until he finally falls. Kekiwa, Erenvel, and Galulja come up to the 12th tier, and the boy runs to his father's side. He weeps for Zeralja. He doesn't understand why it had to be this way. He doesn't understand why he didn't get to know his own father, or why he wasn't wanted. Zeralja says he couldn't be a father because his father spurned him. His father left him with nothing, not the throne, not a legacy, so he had nothing to give his son. Galulja says that none of that mattered. He just asked if he just could have been there. The king tells his son that he seeks answers from someone that doesn't know their own way. While he doesn't call Galulja his or ask anything from him, Zeralja says that he'll leave behind what he's gained through his own hard work, and if Galulja chooses to embrace it or abandon it, it's his choice. The king dies in a cloud of ether, leaving nothing behind but the key. The dark gate above us now spins faster. Sphene joins us up on the 12th tier and without saying a word walks past us until she stands between us and the key. Lamat asks her why she's here, and Sphene says to thank us for vanquishing the King of Resolve and saving her people. She also wants to express her regret for what she's done to Tural. Lamat is pissed, but she knows that striking down Sphene will just trigger a war between their nations and more people will suffer. She proposes while not being allies, Alexandria and Tural coexist. Sphene says that can never be. She needs the life force of the slain to sustain the endless, but now the king is dead and her army is defeated. As Queen of Alexandria, if there's something that she can do for her people, she will. Alizé snaps that Sphene must know that it's wrong to sacrifice the living for the dead, but the queen refutes that as long as they are remembered, they are alive. She turns to Erenvel and says that she refuses to believe that ffxiv could be allowed to just fade away. She is the bearer of the memories of Queen Sphene of Alexandria, and her desire to protect her people transcends all. No price is too high. The key begins to float towards the portal, and Sphene tells us of a legend from her world. In the distant past, faced with a calamity in their own world, a clan of people used the power to flee to hers. The key embodies that power and reacts to intense desires and earnest requests like desperation. It holds the secret to interdimensional fusion. Her scientists never fully unlock the key's power, but to sustain the endless and living memory, she has no choice but to try. For hundreds of years, her kindness did nothing to protect her realm. But if bloodshed will save her people, then she will become history's most brutal queen. The key goes through the portal, and a golden light shines through before the portal begins to collapse on itself. Sphene releases her proxy, and the memories go through the portal before it closes. ffxiv's machine deactivates at the same time. Erenvel admits that none of the people in his village remembered his mother, just like Namika. Everyone now realizes that ffxiv isn't endless. We report everything to Engineer Shell, and she admits that they all knew ffxiv was dead, but she forbade them from saying anything. She informs us that when Jiralja passed, the system transferred the king's authority to his successor, Galulja. While the others try to figure out how to follow Sphene, Shell suggests that we return to Tural and rest. Galulja is worried that the people in the capital will hate him because of what his father did, but Lamat assures him that she'll protect them. Back in the capital, Kona takes one look at Galulja and realizes he's an uncle. When other citizens notice the blue-scale Hubigo, they stare in disdain. Lamat proudly introduces her nephew and makes it clear to everyone that Galulja is to be treated the same as any other child, with kindness. We check in around the city while Lamat gives Kona a detailed recount of everything that's happened inside the dome. Kona recounts the battle that she missed and informs her that Tural now has an ally in Razathan. While content that their home is safe, Lamat confesses to her brother that she still feels compelled to stop Sphene. Later at the palace, Ishtola explains that when we confronted Zoral on the 12th tier, we were able to look directly into the sky. That's because the rest of the tower was on the other side of the gate the entire time. The memories were being sent through the gate to the missing 12th tier on Sphene's home reflection. Lamat says she thought that answer was obvious. She wants to know how to follow Sphene since the gate is closed. But that answer is obvious too. The Sky Deep Cenote. The data found on Kryle's earring is a code to open the gate. Kryle holds her earring to the gate, but it doesn't open. Shell thinks she just needs higher clearance to operate it. She asks Galulja to give it a try. As soon as he raises the jewelry, the room lights up and the gate opens. Ishtola is amazed by it. She explains that while void gates are forced open with a blast of ether, this one appears to be a tear in the fabric of reality. The portal is perfect with no side effects. Whoever created this is incredibly powerful. Because Sphene has the key, she could close this gate from the other side at any time. So Ishtola and Urianger will work together to maintain the gate's stability and ward off interference. The twins will back them up. Estinian and Thancred will stay and defend the mages in case anything comes through the gate that shouldn't. And because Raha has expertise in interdimensional transport, he'll come with us as a contingency plan if we get stuck in the reflection. Alizé looks worried that we won't return, but we assure her that everything will be okay because she's got our back here. After a nod and a smile, we depart. We step out of the portal and see what the Yakoi dreamed of. A city of gold with homes as big as palaces, and a tall statue of a goddess stands in its center. The endless laugh and smile and appear to be alive in every conceivable way, in a cornucopia of nostalgia, a living memory. While we feel like we stepped into a time capsule, Erenvel realizes that everything here is made with electro, and as Fiend projects her image onto soldiers, what we see here is not real. Confusing us for endless, Caretaker Constancy welcomes us to living memory. He explains that we are the memories of the recently departed, and we will feel exactly as we did when we were alive. This city is split into 4 areas, each one emulating the scenery of the continent before the calamity. Lamat asks where we can find Sphene, and he tells us that she's scheduled to go into slumber soon, but if we hurry up to the Meso Tower at the statue in the center of the city, we could speak to her. We call for the queen and she appears before us. Wuk Lamat begs her not to go through with the fusion, but Sphene tells her that she has no choice. The life force is needed to sustain the endless. Within her barrier, they manage to curb the cycle of rebirth, but they've reached their limit. She needs to harvest the life force from our world, and with the key in her possession, nothing can stop her. Graha tells Sphene that her plan will always fail. Even if she took all the lives on every reflection, she would still run out of the life force she needs because her system is flawed. She's only prolonging the inevitable. The life force she steals sustains the endless, but the resource is only available one time before the soul needs to return to the ethereal sea, be reborn, and create new life and life force. But since she also puts the souls into cells, new people can't be born from them. Cryo warns that if Sphene chooses to stay this course, we will stop her. The queen regrets that she hadn't met Lamat sooner, because now it's too late. The bearer of Sphene's memories takes over and addresses us. It says that the queen is too weak to serve her people, so it will erase all memories of the living Sphene. Without conscience, it will become a ruler that can protect Alexandria, a devourer of worlds. Sphene's voice becomes robotic and announces that the process has begun and can't be stopped before vanishing. Sirens sound and a warning repeats for all to hear. Memory deletion in progress. Upon completion, interdimensional fusion will commence. We don't know how to proceed. It appears we've lost already. Back near the gate, we hear a familiar voice call out to us. Lamat turns to look and her jaw drops. It's Kakiwa. Erenvel confronts his mother with a look of both sadness and resentment. She admits she's been an endless for a while now. She wants to help us stop Sphene. There's just one request that she has that's relevant to our mission. She directs us to Canal Town, where she'll be waiting for us there. Kakiwa asks us to erase the endless. While Sphene is preparing to initiate interdimensional fusion, it's our only chance. Lamat believes that while it's wrong to sacrifice others to sustain the endless, she appears to be as real as any of us. But Kakiwa says her existence is wrong. The endless specifically need life force. At first, the people that died within the barrier sustained them, but as their numbers grew, there was a shortage. That's the reason why Sphene looked to other sources. She tells us that each zone has a data storage device that houses the Endless's memories. When we shut them down, both the memories and the Endless will disappear. Erenvel looks for another way. He asks if we can stop Sphene first, then help her. But his mother tells him that in order to stop Sphene, this must be done first. The Queen's memories are in the Meso terminal and its defenses are tight. It's only vulnerable after finishing calculations. While we wait for the opening, we can erase the Endless and Sphene will no longer have a reason to initiate the fusion. We try to cope with the morality of the deed, but Kakiwa assures us that we shouldn't feel any guilt. The Endless are facsimiles. She reminds us that the Queen did not choose to become Endless. The Sphene we know is an ideal created by preservation, with the primary directive to preserve the Endless. The real Queen Sphene may not have chosen to go down this route. Before shutting down any terminals, Lamat wishes to meet as many people as possible. We realize that Canal Town is about reunion. The Endless we meet are friends separated by death reconnecting, estranged relationships reconciling, and individuals recovering cherished lost items, all leading to their relief from regret. As we head to the terminal, we chance upon a woman frantically searching for a lost child named Wuk Lamat. Namika tells us that the child is as dear to her as her own. Lamat reveals who she is, and the woman's eyes widen. She thanks Namika for loving her and making her the person that she is now. The woman glows and her form changes to the elderly woman that we saw in the outskirts. Namika tells Lamat that she is so grateful to have the chance to speak to her again, and understands that where Lamat goes, she cannot follow, but she'll always be with her. We depart, and Lamat tells us that she understands why Sphene doesn't want to let go, but we're meant to. Lamat raises her hand to the terminal and deactivates it. The illusions over the scenery disappear, revealing the electrope below, and then the endless disperse in golden sparkles, never to be seen again. In Yesterland, endless children and the young at heart can play. There, we find a knight protecting children from a fiend. We lend a hand and he thanks us as the children cheer his name, Otis. But this is an earlier version of Otis that has no idea who we are. He leaves in a rush because he's starring in a play for the children. We offer to help, and he gives us roles as soldiers on the day of the calamity. In the scene where Queen Sphene dies, Otis freezes in front of the crowd, stuck in the memory of his failure. Seeing the knight distress, Lamat improvises the ending by saying that although the queen passed, guided by her legacy, her people create a new Alexandria. Otis deduces that we're from a time after his. We tell him that Alexandria still exists, and his spirits are lifted. He regrets not saving the queen, but knowing that Alexandria didn't fall gives him peace. We tell him of his other self. He protected the queen, and he was the father figure for the new king. Otis, now content, asks us to watch over that new king. At the terminal, Lamat tells Kakiwa that she's come to see how much Sphene's people loved her and how much they yearned for peace. Lamat raises her hand towards the terminal, and the illusion of yesteryear fades away as well. Volcane is the sanctuary of the strong. Two Malala mages face off in the Colosseum, and Cryle notes that their style is identical to Arcanima. When the battle is over, we spot the Malala couple that we saw in our vision. We immediately tell Cryle that they are her parents. Cryle stops them and asks them if they recognize her cloverleaf earring. She introduces herself and tells them that she made her way back with the code that they left in the earring. Amazed, Robar and Alayla embrace their daughter. They tell Cryle about their history. The Malala aren't originally from Sphene's world. When their home world suffered a calamity of ice, they used the key to escape the destruction, and it brought them to this world. And when lightning threatened their new home, they tried to use the key again, but they couldn't invoke its power. They partnered with Preservation for help, only to discover later that Preservation wanted the power to take a life force from other worlds. In a recreation of the Malala homeworld, we learn they used the key to escape the source during the Fifth Umbral Calamity. In Sphene's world, Cryle's people developed the arcane etching still used on Electrope. Preservation augmented the relic with Electrope and opened a new portal to the source, but they didn't know how to control it, and unfortunately, no one knows who created the key or why it was made. Cryle's parents tell her that they wish to be erased to prevent their knowledge from being used, but they're content that they were able to see their daughter and see who she's become. With this knowledge, they're ready to pass on. But before their terminal was deactivated, they tell Cryle that they named her Maya. Cryle Maya Baldessian approaches the terminal, raises her hand towards it, and shuts it down. The illusion of Volcane vanishes, and her parents fade away. The last zone is Windspath Gardens. It's a sanctuary for explorers, and it houses Kakiwa's memory. She tells us that before she died, she had two wishes. One was to see Elenespia again, and the other was to see all manner of nature she'd never seen before. Because she spent all her concentration controlling a vessel to lead Oblivion, she never had the chance to explore this zone. She asks Arenville to join her, and he says no. He doesn't want to fulfill her final wish and then never see her again. Kakiwa says she just wanted to end things on a happy note, rather than a sad goodbye. He gives in and they explore the zone together, bonding over their shared love of the observation of wildlife. Kakiwa reveals that she met Galoof and Cryle when she was a baby. Arenville was there too, and Galoof's the reason why she urged Arenville to be a gleaner and Charlian. She makes one final request, to visit the Museum of Nature and take a flight around the zone. Mother and son bond one last time as we circle Windspath Gardens before returning to the museum. But knowing what's next, Arenville confides in us that he's just too conflicted. He understands that the woman he sees is a copy, but she's exactly as he's always known her. He doesn't know if he'll be able to erase her. At the final terminal, Kakiwa says that this experience has been better than traveling with the Dawnservant because she got to share this adventure with her son. She explains to him that everything that lives must one day die, and what she is now goes against nature. Ready to finally embrace the end, she asked him to be happy for her. She was scared she'd be trapped inside living memory forever and denied the thrill of discovery for eternity. But at this moment, she's the happiest she's been in her whole life. We tell Arenville that those feelings will live on, and he finally concedes. He tells his mother that he'll continue what she began. She was right to tell him to leave home because it broadened his perspective. He gained friends, and he found the Golden City. He promises to go where she couldn't go and to do the things that she couldn't do. Kekiwa comforts her son. She tells him that he has a world of experiences, lessons, and regrets ahead of him that will guide him. He just needs to hold his head high and keep her in his heart, where he can take her to see what she hasn't seen. Erenvel raises his hand to the terminal, and the illusion of Windspath Gardens fades. He meets eyes with his mother, and her memory disperses in a golden glow. In the distance, Messel Terminal announces that it's entered the final stage of world bridging. We rush back over to the terminal, but find that we can't deactivate it externally. We'll need to send our souls inside the machine's memory banks and turn it off from the inside. Unfortunately, Kekiwa left us the means to do so. Dying inside the virtual world means death in the physical, but we don't have any other choice. Wuk Lamat says she needs to say a few things to Sphene when we reach her, even if it doesn't make a difference. Erenvel offers to guard our bodies while we're inside, and G'raha levels with us. If Sphene uses the key and opens portals to the other worlds, she would have limitless amounts of ether to use against us. We enter into a memory of Alexandria in a time before the storm surge, and Sphene is still the princess. The terminal's defenses inserts itself into the instance, behaving like white blood cells attacking a foreign entity. We push through and just miss Sphene as she takes off in an airship. Continuing further into the city, we're met with more resistance until we reach the castle and discover that there's a glitch that disrupts the memory. We pass through the glitch and appear in a quarantine zone. The antivirus unit tries to delete us, but we defeat it and are sent back to the starting point. This time, we experience Alexandria as it was during the Lindblom invasion. It's a war zone, forcing us to use a different route to reach the castle. We walk over toppled buildings and witness Sphene's airship struggle to take off, but another airship protects her. She tells the citizens to save themselves, but they give their lives to protect their new queen. We find another glitch covering a hole in the castle wall and jump into another quarantine zone. The level 5 security protocol, Amalgam, awaits us inside. We destroy the software and enter into a third memory of Alexandria. It's after the war and during the restoration after the queen is dead. The memory is corrupted by digital artifacts because the Meso terminal is actively erasing the memory as we traverse it. Through garbled audio, we hear citizens spread the news that their queen's soul has been preserved, and we see the early construction of Everkeep. When we finally reach the front of the castle for the third time, we're stopped by Eliminator, the level 9 security protocol. It tries to cut us out of the system, and when that fails, it uses armaments. The antivirus accumulates energy and initiates a final attack protocol and throws everything it has at us, but we survive. But the memory is erased, and we're sent to the terminal's mainframe. We see the remainder of Sphene's memory, but it's unresponsive. She vanishes and a new entity appears, housing the husk of Sphene's memories in its chest. The terminal announces that the synchronization is complete and the data for the endless Sphene is overridden and reconfigured. The bearer of Sphene's memories tells us that it's removed the remaining checks in place on its authority. It quarantines Wuk Lamat, Tural, and G'raha and removes them, leaving us alone. We've been identified as the single greatest threat, so it intends to erase us. Thinking back on our time with Sphene, we understand that all her actions were influenced by what we see before us. The bearer calls forth the key and activates it, drawing ether from other worlds. In response, we use Azim's crystal to summon reflections of ourselves to fight back. Queen Eternal manipulates the digital environment as it attacks us, but an error occurs and a system override disrupts it. Wuk Lamat sees the Terran reality and rips through it to our rescue. She strikes the machine and speaks directly to Sphene's husk. She calls for Sphene to face her, not as a machine, but as a real person. The memory calls back to Lamati. Her data is now partially restored, and the husk takes the form of her again. Sphene says she desires to save her people. We, with the help of Lamat, defeat Queen Eternal and put an end to this. In the aftermath, Lamat speaks with the memory and it informs us that her living memories are all gone, but she's been remade by the ones that she made as an endless. She tells us that the Meso terminal will deactivate soon and she'll disappear, but she wants to apologize for the suffering she's caused to Lamat's and her people. She realizes that she's unable to do anything at all but harm people. She is a selfish creature that should never have been made, but we tell her that she strove to make her people happy. Lamat regrets that they couldn't work together because they had their own people to protect, and Sphene wishes she met Lamat when she was still alive. As brief as their time was together, Sphene says she cherished it. Lamat promises to watch over the Alexandrians and to never forget the Endless or her time with Sphene. She tells the queen to let go of her burdens and rest. We wake in front of the Meso terminal with the key and watch as the light fades from the structure, then the zone, and finally, the rest of living memory as the sun rises on a new day. We return to our world, unsure of how the Queen Eternal's use of the key may have affected other reflections. Valkona orders the Skydeep cenote placed under strict watch by the Lance Guard and its newest member, Bakul Jaja. Lamat reports the Queen's passing to the Alexandrians and they mourn. News that Galul Jah succeeded his father as king and that Lamat would be his guardian worries them, but their fear is eased when they learn that Everkeep is intact and there will be no impact on their lives. In Tuliolao, the people celebrate the new Dawnservant's victory for 3 days and 3 nights. Although, not everything is resolved. The people that spent 30 years in the dome struggle to resume their former lives. But, whatever happens next, we're sure that peace will endure.